the Trillion Trees podcast hosted by Saad Allahwala. Join the movement. 1 trillion trees by 2030. Tune in for inspiring stories, groundbreaking ideas, and real solutions to tackle climate change. Listen to it. Watch every Saturday, 4 p.m. Make an impact now.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Trillion Trees podcast. I'm Nafe, and this podcast is our part of 2026 series spotlighting people in Pakistan working in the intersection of climate, technology, and real-world impact. Our guest today is someone I've generally enjoyed build in public, asking hard questions about energy access, EVs, and equity, while still being very grounded in local realities. I'm joined with Roha Rehan, an electrical engineer from LUMS, founder of Parkplug, creator of Roshan Grid, and recently part of the Margala School of Energy and Climate. Roha, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Nafe. That was a really nice introduction. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Ben. I want to start with this conversation. Like, I don't want to do with any titles or projects without any association. My first question to really guide us into this whole podcast and also make something out of it. So, what actually like pulled you into climate and energy space? Not like I don't want like the polished version, but the moment where this like stopped being academic for you and started feeling personal.
So, when I was growing up and when I had to choose OA level subjects, I was told that it's either medical or engineering. I didn't have an option for a third stream. I come from a family of engineers. I'm the third generation of electrical engineers. My grandfather was an electrical engineer, and my father was an electrical engineer, and now I. So somebody had to keep the legacy going, and fortunately or unfortunately, that had to be me in my family. So everyone told me that, not everybody, but my parents told me that these two streams and you have to pick one. So medical, I was sure that that's something I can't do. So I went into engineering, and honestly, I didn't start off with engineering also. So in A levels, I was like, I'm not going to do engineering. I'm going to do computer science because that's the new engineering. So I kept physics, maths, and computer science in A levels because I was so sure that I was going to do computer science, and chemistry wasn't a requirement for computer science, but it was one for engineering. So my school counselor was like to me that you're not going to get in with these subjects. You will need chemistry as well. So see what you want to do. So I was like, no, I'll get in. So like I'll manage without it. So she's like, no, you will never be able to do engineering without it, firstly. So even if you want to switch, you won't be able to switch. And then she told me that for places like LUMS that have an entry test that's based on the 3 sciences and maths, you're not going to be able to pass it because you only have physics and maths.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, I'll manage. I'll study separately for the test. So fast forward, I passed the LUMS test without chemistry and biology, and I got into SSC. So my first 2 years, I knew I was going to do computer science, but something didn't feel right. Like no matter what I did, I could not get to code and do all of that. And eventually I realized that's not something I want to do. So I wanted to switch. And then again, when I wanted to switch, I talked to my parents, and they were like, I was like, maybe, I could try out econ. So they're like, no, there's only engineering left. So you can switch to electrical engineering. So I was like, okay, I can't do CS, but I'm supposed to do electrical engineering. And then this one professor in CS department also said to me, that's going to be harder. And if you can't do CS, you should not do engineering. You should just switch to humanities. So I was like, it's not like I have an option. So I switched to electrical engineering. By the end of my 3rd year, I actually hated engineering. And I was like, I'm just going to do this degree. I'm doing it for my dad. I'm going to give him this degree. and that's it. I'm going to do like a master's in MBA or like a data analytics master's, and I'm going to like pivot from this field. This is not something I want to do for the rest of my life. So, and very honestly, the internship that I did in my junior summer, like the summer after my junior year, that was a marketing internship. Even though it was a software house internship, but it was in marketing. So,
That's
because
interesting.
yeah, so I was very sure, and even they were like, "Hey, you know, why, as an electrical engineer, do you want to do an internship in marketing?" So I was like, because I want to switch after graduation, so I want experience in this field. And I was very sure that engineering is just something I'm doing for my parents, and after this, I don't have anything to do with it. But then the same summer, I started doing a research project with one of my professors. So how I started off doing that research project is also very interesting. So because I switched to electrical engineering after 2 years, I had really less time to complete my course. And electrical engineering has cores that are a lot more than other degrees. So if I did a research project in summer, it would count as 2 credit hours. So it would cover like 2 credit hours for my elective. So I was like, like, okay, if I can reduce 2 credit hours from the next semester, I'll just do this research project. And then I was like, like obviously this has to be something related to electrical engineering. So I'll just do something with maybe data and electric vehicles. So that's how I talked to my professor, and I was like, sir, he asked me what I wanted to do, and I was like, sir, I've taken this course on data science and I found it really interesting, and I just want to relate it to electric vehicles. So if I could do just like a 6 weeks over the summer kind of research project. And then he was like, okay. And then he connected me to professors from the Lumps Energy Institute who were particularly working on electric vehicles. And also who turned out to be my senior year supervisor as well. So connected me to that professor as well. And so I started working on it, and then it wasn't like a lot of work. Like, it was just research based, that what are the gaps that are currently existing in Pakistan and all of that. And then that kind of ended, but I continued working for it. Like, it wasn't like it was part of my courses, let's say. So after that, I had to finalize my senior year project, and I knew for a fact that I wasn't a hardware person, so I couldn't do any hardware projects. So my professor was like, why don't you continue this project into your senior year project? So I was like, yeah, that's something that I've enjoyed over the summer as well. And that didn't really feel like coursework to me or something that I was doing for a grade or something just to pass as well. So I can do that. So he's like, yeah. And then I talked to like 2 people from the Lumps Energy Institute who also turned out to be my co-supervisors for the project. And then I had 2 supervisors from the electrical engineering department. So by the end of my senior year project, which was Roshan Grid basically, even though it wasn't meant to be Roshan Grid, that's another story. So by the end of my senior year project, I enjoyed it so much, and especially like in the past 4 years, that was something that I genuinely wanted to do. That was something I genuinely wanted to figure out how I can make this work, and it was something that I would say made me want to come back to it. So that's something, and so when it ended, that's how I kind of knew that, maybe electrical engineering worked out for me, because that's how I wanted to enter the energy and climate space.
Yeah, that's a really, good journey that you went on with. And yeah, and I, really understands of like how sometimes you are put into that position through like urgency, or just like life's puts you in that position just with like perspective and all. So yeah, I think so. That's being in this space within energy. Was there a point where you realize, now that you've been out of lumps for a while, it's been more than a year now. So was there a point where you realize, in terms of working in the energy sector, that it's also about equity? And did you see yourself building that from that position on?
Yeah, so when I entered this industry and space, I think that there were a lot of places that needed to be worked on, especially within the context of Pakistan. Like, we see a lot of development being done in this space abroad, and I feel
Hmm.
like the problem for our country is that we tend to adapt to solutions that other people make for their countries. And I think that's not the way that we should go about it, because our problems are very different from their problems. So
Definitely.
just because solar or renewable is being, I would say, trending in the space, and other countries are adopting it at a certain pace, that doesn't mean that Pakistan should be adopting it at
Mhm.
at the same pace as well. Pakistan needs to set its own space. And I felt like one of the major gaps that I found in this was that when policies are made in Pakistan, policy makers are not engineers. So while engineers can't give you the public policy aspect, policymakers can't give you the engineering aspect. I feel like it's a two-way thing, and that is something that really needs to be improved in Pakistan. So both professions need to sit down together. Not even just these, there's so many other things involved, like lawyers, activists, and all of that. So I feel like the decision-making power really needs to be, I would say, I can't find the right word for it, but I would say that we really need to rethink how we're forming our policies, how we're making decisions as as a
Mhm.
country.
Yes,
So,
definitely. I think so.
yeah,
That's a real good way on how we take on things, because we feel like in Pakistan, within the status quo of Pakistan, there is a lot of policy making, but I feel like there's a lot of intersection that needs to happen within the policymakers, the technical teams, and even, within the climate space and the energy space, there is a lot of activism that is now, happening. But even the activism is happening through conversations that exist in the academia right now. So the academic and the
yeah.
technical part of it does take a shape, but that movement just dies down when it goes to the policymaker, because they don't really understand, the aspect of how they're coming on. Because still the area of climate and the climate change, it's a chatter around, but it's just echoing in these walls, because people don't realize what the actual needs of the country are, because it's not just about adapting renewable change or going to just doing reforestation. It's more than just those grassroots. So yeah, I
Uh,
do understand those perspective where you say, like,
And
we need to
honestly,
really.
I feel like as a country we lack a lot of accountability. Like, if you want to hold one person in the ecosystem accountable, they're not going to say that, yeah, we're at fault, we're going to fix it. They're going to say we're doing it 100% correct. Even if they aren't,
Mm.
they're going to say they're doing it 100% correct, and they're going to blame it on somebody else. For instance, if you look at the energy sector, if you talk about distribution companies like Let's Go
Mm.
Electric, they're going to be like, no, we're doing it fine. It's not us. The problem is the generation companies or the transmission companies. If you talk to them, they're going to blame it on someone else. So I feel like there's a big circle of a blame game in Pakistan that really needs to be solved by holding people accountable.
Definitely. So now let's talk about Roshan Grid, because I think it's a great example of climate tech that's actually rooted in local context that you talked about. So what problem were you trying to solve with Roshan Grid, and why did, the transformer level modeling matter for Pakistan specifically?
So, this kind of started with my research work, which was electric vehicles in Pakistan. So, essentially, how my research started off was I wanted to see that by 2030, because Pakistan has set NDC targets for 2030, that 30% of new sales for cars, not just cars, but for vehicles, should be electric vehicles. Right.
Hmm.
So it's further divided into some other targets for like different categories like bus, trucks, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and four-wheelers. So I wanted to see that how what numbers are we expecting till 2030, and then
Hmm.
what how they're going to be affecting the grid basically. So when I projected the numbers and I did my research and all of that around that, and then we saw how much they would be affecting the grid, we realized that there's also a lot of solar potential coming in by 2030 that's going to be able to offset it, and there's not going to be extra load on the grid because of the electric vehicles, because
Definitely.
already our grid is becoming very underutilized due to the rooftop solar.
Yeah.
So I realized that the bigger picture seemed okay and there was no problem in it, but there was a huge problem at the smaller micro level, which was the transformer level, and that problem was often ignored. So currently in Pakistan, transformer planning there's no transformer pre-planning, like upgrades of transformers or where new transformers are going to be installed. So even you probably know that once a transformer goes off after overloading, then they come in and change the transformer or just attach something extra to it and kind of fix it. So I realized that since this is the methodology that's been continued from years, so once electric vehicles come in, so even if one transformer is, let's say, supplying to 8 to 12 houses in a neighborhood, and even if every house adopts to one electric vehicle, that transformer is definitely going to overload. So Roshan Grid was made to fill in that gap, especially for distribution companies, so they can pre-plan and see that if in one particular scenario, this is the amount of EV uptake, this is the working capacity of the transformer, this is the remaining capacity, how much, if it would overload or not, and if it would overload, how much it would overload by, how much capacity they have to increase. So it was made to shift planning from reactive to predictive, and that's actually the slogan we kept for Roshan Grid also.
That's really interesting. So what did you learn about these data caps and like infrastructure constraint while building this? Like this is like, through research, you also learn a lot of things. So
Yeah.
with then you did mention about the pre-planning part of the infrastructure and how we take on things, but what was something that felt like a good insight into this?
Okay, so when I talk about the data part, there's a lot of lack of data in Pakistan. Like, I would say that when I was looking at numbers, when I had to project electric vehicle numbers to see by 2030 what are we expecting, I couldn't find electric vehicle data in the sense that it wasn't enough for me to forecast for the next 5 years. So when I looked at national reports, they were very limited because so many electric vehicles are not even registered. So when you import them, that's something else. But if you look at registered vehicle data, which we can access publicly from the national website, you realize that a lot of electric vehicles are not even registered. When you talk about two-wheelers or three-wheelers, they are retrofitted also. So they're not counted as electric vehicles when they are registered. They've been registered as ICE vehicles. So there was that gap. Then there was when I looked at import data as well, there were really less numbers before COVID. So I mean, it wasn't enough for me to project them for the next 5 years. So I had to take a different approach around it. And I think that's what academia really teaches you, how with limited data you can still continue with your research and make the most out of it.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
so what we did was that we took ICE vehicle data, so internal combustion engine data, and we projected that for the next 10 years. And then then we followed the NDC targets, which were set for 2030, and we divided them and gave weights to every year that if we are to meet that scenario, what are the numbers that we are expecting? And then when we did further calculations, we divided them into like 3 parts where we looked at if 100% adoption of the numbers that we've calculated, if there's like a 50% adoption of the numbers we've calculated, or a 25%. So we saw different scenarios for that. So I think lack of data was one of the biggest challenges I faced in this research. And I really hope that we're able to digitize our systems one day. And so this lacking can be solved, because even today, if you look at, they're installing smart meters, but I know that we still have people coming in and taking pictures for our bills, but that's not how it should work. But I'm really hoping that one day we're able to overcome this problem as well.
Definitely. This feels like, climate tech that doesn't assume like perfect infrastructure, which is honestly where most innovation needs to happen. So also, if I'm not wrong, you did present your senior thesis and this thing about Roshan Grid internationally as well. So how did presenting this work change how you see Pakistan's role in global energy conversations?
So I got to present this research at 2 different conferences. One was held in Malaysia, and then one was in Australia. So I got to interact with different people who were also coming in with different papers and research projects. A lot of them were based on, let's say, batteries and the cars itself. But I feel like this was one
Mm.
aspect that really lacked for people, especially from developing countries, also because this is not just Pakistan's problem. This is really a problem for all developing nations. Because while everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon to have electric vehicles, and even Pakistan has set goals, which we may not be able to achieve, honestly. But when I realized that when we're talking about it, we're ignoring one of the major aspects, that's the infrastructure for the electric vehicles. And like through the conferences, also I realized that a lot of people focus on the hardware aspect. There are really limited number of people who focus on the policy aspect of it, or the
Mm.
social impact that it's going to have on the people who have to purchase them. So yeah, that's one thing I would say I got to experience from these conferences.
That's very nice. We're we're trying to mix up the conversation a little. So, this is a rapid fire round. Quick ones. First thing that comes to your mind. It's related around energy and stuff. So, one energy myth in Pakistan you'd love to retire.
I would love to, sorry.
You'd love to like retire, like something that we think
Uh,
about a lot, but it doesn't really happen.
okay. Electricity will prices will come down.
Okay, a climate trend you're quietly excited about.
Electric vehicles.
One skill students should build if they want to work in climate tech.
Policy making.
That's really nice. Something you're personally excited to build next.
Spark plug.
Okay, now that you've mentioned Park Plug, we're gonna shift to that. After all of your time at LUMS and then from taking the time to pivoting into your professional career after graduating, you were then able to found Park Plug, which is a peer-to-peer EV charging platform, and it is a very bold move for Pakistan. And since when we last talked about and got to know about Park Plug, there have been more developments in this region. So, what made you believe that EVs and decentralized charging could actually work here, despite all of the obvious challenges that we face in Pakistan?
Okay. So why I started Powerplug has a lot to answer to this question. And there are honestly two reasons why I started Powerplug. One is a really personal reason. So for me, we only have electric cars in our at our place. So when we have to travel from Lahore to Islamabad, we actually have to borrow a car from someone else because we don't know
Mm.
that if we're traveling to Islamabad, are we going to find a charger in Islamabad or not? And even if we know where a charger is located, we don't know if it's going to be functional at the time we're going to charge our car. So
Yeah.
instead of being stranded because of that, we actually have to borrow a car from someone else, a petrol car, so we can travel. And honestly, that's a big hassle. So every time you need to request people, can we borrow your car to travel? Uh, so one was this, and the second was that while I was doing my research for Ocean Grid, we also did a market survey to see how realistic the 30% target is for Pakistan to adopt, because honestly, that's a big number to achieve in the next 5 years. And
Mm.
if we see the current market, I would say that we're very far from it. So I wanted to understand what people think about electric vehicles and what's stopping them from adopting them. So a lot of people had to say that we find a petrol pump every 2 kilometers, but I don't see a charging station every 2 kilometers. So in the case I need to charge my car, how do I know where I charge my car? And then I realized that, this is one of the biggest problems we also face as EV users, and I'm sure that's what other people face as well. And that's one thing that's stopping people from moving towards the adoption. So that's essentially how I came up with Parkplug, because currently we only had public charging infrastructure available, and that too is also very limited. By the way, like in Lahore, there are about 6, 7 chargers, I think, and Lahore is very big for 6, 7 chargers. So I realized that I need to build with what currently exists. So I didn't have investment for big public charging infrastructure. So I realized that a mobile app is something that can be built to help people connect to each other. So Park Plug is essentially an Airbnb, but for EV chargers. And this is how Park Plug came into place. And I'm really hoping I can take it somewhere.
Yeah, I find it interesting that you're not just like building for like early adopters, but thinking how inclusion from day one can look like.
Yeah.
So, what
So
assumptions?
actually,
Hmm.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I was just going to say that right now, I think Park Plug is not a necessity in Pakistan because there are very less EV drivers. So I feel like that people don't really understand the importance. But in 5 years, I'm sure people are going to see why it was so important to build it back then.
Yeah, definitely. So through your research and building Parkplug right now, so what assumptions about EV adoption in the global south? Let's take a broader step away from Pakistan. In the global south, do you actively disagree with right now?
Assumptions for EV adoption. Okay. So I feel like if I'm talking about Pakistan, because that's the more I would say that's the area that I've more knowledge about. So
Mhm.
if I were to talk about Pakistan, I feel like that Pakistan, the government is now working towards EVs. Like you see e-taxis in Lahore and Islamabad at least. I'm not sure about other places, but I've seen them in Lahore and Islamabad. There are a lot of two-wheeler EVs in Lahore now. And interestingly, I see a lot of girls driving them. So that's a great thing. Then you said I heard of this e-taxi scheme also that the government is introducing. And then there are also like a few other schemes that the government has introduced as subsidies for electric cars or electric bikes. But the thing is that when you hear about these schemes, they kind of just stay schemes. They
Yeah.
aren't implemented that way. So I think it's been a while since I heard about the e-taxi scheme at least, and I haven't seen anyone drive it yet. So I feel like that's something that I have a huge problem with, that they put out the policy, they put out the schemes, but then they're just there for marketing purposes, honestly. I
Mhm.
don't see them being adopted. Like, so I feel like at a government level, that's one of the biggest issues I have. Even though I see a lot of private companies working towards it, like Daewoo has started its first electric bus from Lahore to Sialkot.
Oh, I
And
didn't know about this.
yeah. And interestingly, when I attended this EV conference where I found out that Daewoo has started their first bus, they mentioned a problem, which was that when they were going to install the charger for their bus, that feeder was overloaded. And that's when I realized this is why Roshan Grid is so important in Pakistan, because if they really want the adoption, they need to figure these things out.
Yeah,
So,
I think.
yeah. So I think one of the biggest problems that I have within the Pakistan's context is that they come up with really nice policies, but there's no implementation of it. So I think a lot of adoption would rely on private companies for now.
Yeah, definitely. I like you really mentioned, at the start of our conversation as well, that when we talk about advocacy and like scaling climate solutions, we often forget who are we talking about and who we're designing it for. Like there is a lot of research and a lot of development that's happening, but it's also right now on paper, so it goes somewhere abroad. Like it's
Yeah.
a lot of like there is a lot of export of ideas, and even people who should be working here for the future of Pakistan, but it really goes on to their ideas are being adopted or taken away by some private company and taken away like outside of Pakistan.
I mean, yeah, if I were to add to it, I would just like to say that while you're keeping a 30% target for your country, are you
Mhm.
facilitating the 30% target? Are you
Mhm.
developing infrastructure for that target to achieve? Because people are not going to buy it if they don't see a charging infrastructure for it. That's like the basic necessity for people. And then
Mhm.
not just that, but there's a lot of apartment culture in Pakistan. Apartments don't let you charge EVs. You need to figure out how to facilitate those people. There's so many things that you need to cater to. Are you doing that, or are you just setting the number because at some conference or some paper you need to present it that this is the number that we've said, this is how much emissions we're going to be reducing.
Definitely.
So it really comes down to that.
Yeah. I want to segue this conversation to a much more of a ending note and talk about your experience being a female founder in Pakistan, that also in the climate and climate tech industry. So, because it really matters, what has been your experience navigating this space as a woman in Pakistan? Do you often like feel underestimated or over scrutinized? Touch base on that a little bit.
Interestingly, I got this question very recently by someone else also. But I feel like generally, people do look down upon women in STEM, I would say.
Hmm.
So as I mentioned, I was told by a professor I can't do engineering, I should switch to humanities. So that was the first time I was really put down by that way. But also in my batch, I would say we were a batch of 42 people with 10 girls only. So like we've always studied in male dominated classes and all of that. But if I were to talk about my startup experience, it hasn't been that bad as people would think it would be. I've gotten really encouraging mentors as well. And I'm also part of this CLIP incubator. It's a climate incubator by Renewables First. So they've put in us in touch with a mentor, and I think he's really helpful in that sense as well. So I feel like I've gotten in touch with different people also over this spark plug and all of that, and I feel like there are a lot of people who are really motivating towards it, but then also there are very few people who are going to guide you to the exact point that you need it. So there are going to be a lot of people like who are going to say, "Wow, that's a great idea. We'll get in touch," but they're not going to get in touch. So there are very few people who genuinely are there to help you out as a startup founder.
Mm.
But I think that's not a women problem. I would say that's generally with startup founders. So I think that's a more of a problem that I faced than like I would say a woman and women founder problem. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's more of an entrepreneurial problem that's happening all around. So, closing this, Roha, this was genuinely fun and very grounding and also very insightful. What I really appreciate about your work is how you're very ambitious without being detached from reality. And from anyone listening, we'll link Roha's work and Park Plug and Roshan Grid below. If you're interested in climate, energy, and equity, you can follow her energy. And to everyone tuning in, more Pakistan related conversations will be coming soon. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much, Roha, again for coming and giving us your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Nafe. It was great speaking to you, and I hope someone will find this interesting as well.
They will definitely. Okay, bye bye.
Bye bye.